Hello. Recently, I finished reading a very poignant debut Irish novel called The Language of Remembering by Patrick Holloway. And the ending of this book, I was in tears for the last couple of chapters because I found it so heartbreaking and beautiful. And I think part of the power of that comes from the way in which this book is structured because it moves in alternating chapters between then and now. So in the now sections, we're following a young man named Ashin who has just moved back to his native Ireland from Brazil with his Brazilian wife, Nina, and their young daughter. And part of the reason he's moved back to Ireland is to help care for his mother, Bridget, who is suffering from Alzheimer's. And in the then sections, we are following Bridget when she was a teenager, and she has just found out that she is pregnant by the local sports hero who's named James, who's a kind of rising football star, and he comes from a very privileged family. He is much beloved by the community, and Bridget comes from not so privileged family, and she finds herself in this very difficult circumstance because they are not married yet, and so this is kind of a local scandal in this Irish community at the time. And because in the now sections, Bridget is suffering from Alzheimer's, she frequently lapses into believing that the past is still present for her. And because Bridget's father spoke Irish in their household when she was growing up, and Bridget's mother, Kathleen, sings to her in Irish, she reverts to speaking Irish. And so when Sheen goes to visit Bridget at the care homes or a care facility where she is being looked after because of her Alzheimer's, she is speaking in Irish, and Sheen doesn't speak Irish. And so there is this disconnect between them. And so after he moves back, he tries to learn the Irish language in order to understand what his mother is saying. And the way that this story looks at language in such an interesting way, because Ashin speaks Portuguese in Brazil. He was actually a translator, and he still does some freelance work for that. And so and he and his wife Nina, sometimes they'll drop in some Portuguese words in with each other, but also speak English. And so the way that this looks at how language is used, even though different languages are commonly spoke by groups of people, that language takes on this very personal sense for so many of us within our relationships and between family members, that the phrases we use, the words that are chosen, and there are certain ways of speaking and using different languages that become so personal to us. And since Bridget is caught sort of in the past because of her condition, that she lapses into this form of Irish and speaking it, and as a way of trying to communicate with those who have been lost and for her are still there present with her, but they're not there. And so it becomes incredibly poignant how Ashin wants to communicate with her in this way. And as we all know, there's so much difficulty in seeing a family member suffering from this condition, and that there will be periods when she can seem, so-called normal and just be herself, and then other times when she completely lapses into the past and mistakes Ashin for being her husband James or somebody else, and or becomes very disorientated and upset, and it can be so emotionally going through this, and it represents this in the story with Ashin's various meetings with her, and his hesitancy with wanting to meet with her because he doesn't know who he's going to find when he goes to the care facility, and that makes it an incredibly difficult thing. But Ashin is also going through a lot of issues himself. Having newly moved back to Ireland and trying to readjust into to the Irish community, and wanting to get housing and a mortgage for his wife and daughter, and job, and so to establish himself here. But it's also in a point in his life when there's a lot of stress going on with caring for his daughter and his family and his mother, who is suffering from this condition. And so he makes a number of mistakes, and the novel is quite forthright in showing how he is maybe not mistakes, but he's kind of stumbling along the way. Well, he does make some mistakes as well, and I think the novel doesn't let him get away with that, but he is mostly doing the best he can in this difficult situation, but also following Bridget's story in the then sections, as she is in this incredibly scary place of being pregnant and unmarried, and of course in Ireland a few decades ago, and for quite a long time, this is not an acceptable thing, and so the crisis of this point and this moment and what is going to happen with her. And so I found it engaging, both of the now and then sections of the story following these characters' lives, and how in some ways they kind of mirror each other, because as young parents or soon-to-be parents, they are going through their own personal struggles, and the way that is mirrored across generations, I think is quite poignant. But also Bridget's man that she is has having a child with James. He even though he's a local sports star, he is an aspiring poet, and he writes poetry in secret. And this is something that he doesn't feel comfortable telling many people or sharing with anyone except for Bridget. And he shares some of his poems with her, and I found that a very very moving different form of language that a couple can share with each other. That there can be this very inner sense of James's life that he only feels comfortable sharing with Bridget, and that he saves some of these poems, and Bridget saves some of these poems. But also, while she is pregnant, she is writing a letter to her child, and wanting to communicate with this child that she doesn't know, and she doesn't know how things are going to work out in her relationship or her life going forward. But she is writing this letter, and the way that these letters that she writes to her child, the way that connects to the now section, I think is very beautiful. But also I find Bridget's mother and Ashin's grandmother, Kathleen, she's a really fascinating character. She's very strong in many ways, and very authoritative and responsible, and following her story, but also has this touching connection with her daughter that she'll sing to her in Irish, especially during moments of emotional distress, and this very intimate form of communication with them. So the way that this novel looks at communication in general, in the many different ways that language is used, and takes on this very personal meaning for the characters, I think is really beautifully done. And there are certain sections in the middle of the novel that I felt like were slightly dragging a bit, or maybe it was like skipping over periods in Ashin's life too quickly as it moved between the sections, and we were catching up with him as a number of different things had occurred, and so this makes the plot slightly jaunty, but at the same time this structure also gives a lot more poignancy to the story overall in building up to a point when Oisín can actually understand his mother Bridget again, though she is just speaking Irish. And so I thought that was very well done. And I wish there had been more given to the perspective of Oisín's wife Nina, who must have found this an incredibly difficult situation of moving from Brazil to Ireland. So it's not her native country, it's not her native language, and that she doesn't know anyone there except for people that Oisín introduces her to, and so is going through a lot of struggle. And it does, we do get glimpses of that and an understanding of how she is finding this really difficult as well. And partly because of the way that the novel is structured, it means, that and if it had gone into her perspective as well, I think that would have been too disruptive to the story and the back and forth between Oisín and his mother Bridget when she was younger. But overall, I found it very effective and beautiful. And like I said, the ending is just so emotional. What it builds up to. Very, very powerful and very well done. And it's a novel that I hope more people will read and discover. And I'm looking forward to reading whatever Patrick Holloway might publish next. So if you've read this book, I would love to hear what you think about it in the comments below. Or if you're interested in reading it now, or if there's any other new Irish fiction you want to tell me about. I'm a massive fan of Irish fiction, and I think there are so many great debut and new voices coming out of Ireland. So I'd love to hear about that in the comments below. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.